is a lot of flexibility and a lot of power on the inventory management side of these new Anaplan apps. Now, in the real world, things don't always go to plan. So Anaplan has provided the ability to do inventory transfers as well. And it's pretty straightforward, the process. So let me go through it with you guys. The first thing I want to go over is just how it sits in the process flow. So inventory transfers is an input into the inventory planning process. Also included in that is policy management, what we saw, and other things like scenarios definition, and the forecast consumption, which is happening after the demand is brought in and disaggregated. So there's quite a few different things that contribute to the overall planning process. There are also some optional parts in the process, like, for example, inventory expiry, which is something that applies to companies that sell perishable products, but not necessarily to all companies. So there are some pieces that are more specific to certain types of companies. Now, with Anaplan, basically we're using an exception-based management process to identify where to execute inventory transfers. But in the real world, there will be lots of reasons that come up where you will need to do that. If a supplier does not deliver on time, for example, or if they don't deliver a full load, you may need to pull inventory from one location to another. And I'm going to go through the steps to do that in Anaplan because it's fairly straightforward. And those are the 4 steps that I've listed on the bottom of this slide. So let me get out of this now and go into the app. And so starting from the home page, you will see inventory planning and transfers side by side and right next to policies. So these are the first 2 things that we showed today. And then the transfers, this is the main transfer screen, but I'm going to show you how we set this up. So this is not the first place we go. First thing we do is we go to create transfer lanes. Now, this is just a simple list of your distribution centers on the columns and on the rows. And so for the California DC, it's showing up with a blue highlight on Florida, Illinois, et cetera, because those are where I've got transfer lanes set up already. And then anywhere else where I do not yet have a transfer lane, I can set one up. So I could say, let's go from Florida to Canada from here forward by clicking the checkbox and then just saying create transfer lane. And now I'll have the ability to move inventory from Canada to Florida. So this takes a moment to just run all the process steps. And then I go to the second step of the process, which is to define the lead times for the various methods that'll be within this lane. So this is just finishing now. Okay, so now I've got a new lane, and I'm going to go to the next step, which is to update the transfer lane properties. So you'll see I've got a new one here. This is the Canada DC to the Florida DC, which we just set up. I guess I'll just copy the setup from above DC and paste in the lead times that I had from the other one just for now. I could customize this into whatever number of periods I desired, but these are some example shipping methods. You've got air, road, sea, rail, mixed. You can do multimodal, whatever you want, and you'd have your custom lead time for that lane. And then the next step is to then set up for each of those lanes what is the routine way that you're going to ship it. So gives you the opportunity to do a disaggregation percentage, and then set up the transit mode. So in the case of what I just set up, which is the Canada DC to Florida DC, I would say that the normal transit mode will be rail. And then so that's going to give me a lead time for when I do set up a transfer order. It'll give the proper lead time number of periods to that order. And that's the final step where we go into inventory transfers. And then we specifically set something up. So this graph above is just showing you the inventory plotted versus time, and it's showing you inventory depleting based on the forecast. And this may be one way that you would identify places where you might need to make an inventory transfer, because you may not have an order that can be delivered, or a supplier cannot deliver in time to make that shortfall, to make to that point. So what I do to set up a transfer is these 3 steps here. I create a transfer header, which puts a row above it here. And this takes just a moment to do. And then now I've got a transfer header. So I'm going to say, what product am I going to transfer? Let's select product 1. And then I'll create a transfer request. And then this will allow me to finalize the details of the transfer. Runs a few steps and takes a moment, and then we'll be able to finalize. Okay, looks like that finished. So now I've got a transfer up here, and I want to say what lane it's going to be. So it's going to be the Florida to DC to the, I guess we'll do the one that we just created, Canada DC to Florida DC, and we'll get the lead time as from that setup that we did in the prior step. And then I say what period it will be. So let's say, for instance, we have a shortfall in fiscal year 24, week 26. And this is when, so this will finalize it. And then if I make it, so there's also a workflow in this. So if I make it effective, then it allows the approver to do the approval step below. And so once this gets approved by an approver, and you can set up workflow in Anaplan now that automatically sends emails to the person who's responsible for doing the approval and brings them right to this page. So it allows them to check it as approved. And once that happens, the transfer order gets sent to execution with the rest of the plan. And so it's really very simple to set up these transfers. It's just a matter of defining a lane, setting up the different types of lead times for the different shipping methods, and then setting a default shipping method. So then you can then set up transfers as needed. And you can get more sophisticated with how you want to identify these transfer requirements with Anaplan very easily. So it gives you a lot of flexibility. And I think that this is a really well set up and well done app. So let me go back to our presentation.